Okay, welcome to the Cinder R-9 mid-cycle. So our second mid-cycle of this development cycle, which seems to be going really fast. So we don't have a lot, so we'll just go through it. And if we're finished early, then that's good too. I guess let's do the new drivers update. All right, so the most important thing is we got some drivers merged last week. So last Friday was the new driver merge deadline. We got some drivers merged. I gave driver freeze exceptions to 2 drivers that were basically ready. So we do need to concentrate on those. So the 2 drivers are the NEC Storage 5 series. That driver is really a wrapper around a different driver. So there's not a lot of code there to review. And it looks like it's in good shape. The third-party CI is running. It's running the correct tests, and it's responding on other patches. So I need somebody. So it's got 1+1, it's got a bunch of +2s. I guess what I would like is for a core to say, I will review that, so that I can stop worrying about it. Because if it's the new deadline is Friday at 2000 UTC. So any
Which driver is that again?
This is the NEC. Let me paste it in the Etherpad.
Okay, I'll look at it.
All right, thanks. Well, I think you may have actually looked at it already, so that's good. So that should be quick.
Okay.
And I think, did I look at that one previously too?
Possibly.
Yeah, because there was one that I was like, well, I'm okay with it, and you wanted me to hold. I'm looking here.
I'm not sure if that's it or another one. I'm going to put down Walt for that one. All right, so actually let me. All right, so Walt, thanks. Jay may hold you for something else.
Oh yeah, I dropped myself. I was +2 and I went to a +1 because you were waiting for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'll take another quick look at that too, and
okay,
and make sure that it all looks okay to me.
Okay, good. I mean, they've been very responsive, so if you find something, I anticipate that they will fix it right away. So that's good.
Okay.
Now, the other one is the light bits. So it's got 2 parts. It's got the main Cinder driver, and it's got the OS brick connector. It also has a Nova part, but we don't have to worry about that. Okay, so the driver, I've +1'd it. I went through and looked. Simon and Gorka had given it a real thorough run through maybe 2 weeks ago. It looks like most of the comments were responded to and fixed. There was some slight business about the CI running the correct test. That was fixed yesterday, so I'm +2 on that. I think that the driver's in good shape, but of course we need someone else to look. I'd sort of like to save Gorka for the OS brick connector part, if someone else. Although since you went through the, I don't know how you feel about that.
I can have a look. I just finished reviewing the Cinder driver right now.
Oh, you did? Okay.
But I have decided not to vote because there are 2 minor. Well, usually I would don't vote for that, but given the speed at which they have been fixing things and everything, I think it would be unfair to do it. Basically, they are making a call to warn, log.warn instead of warning, and that one is deprecated. And then they were told to add in all the exceptions they raised, the translation function, the underscore. And there are a couple of places where it's not necessary because it's not going to reach the user. But I don't think it's that bad. So So I have reviewed, but I haven't voted. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't want to downvote for that.
Right.
I think you're online now, so let's get it out of the way. I see you've got 6 comments in there. So I think the light bits guys are on, aren't you?
Yes, Yuval here. Yes, hi Yuval.
Yes, I'm here. If there's anything need to be fixed, I will do it right away.
Yeah, Gorka's put his comments in the patch, so.
Yeah, it's minor stuff, and I think it's what I asked on IRC, the underscore and call, and you understood perfectly when it makes sense to add it, which is when it reaches the user. And in this case, it's only when you raise an exception within initialize connection or terminate connection, or any method that it's inside of that one. Oh, it's called from that one, because those exceptions are catched by the Cinder Volume Manager, and then they are passed to the caller, to a REST API caller, because it's a synchronous call. So it's unlike the rest of the methods. That and the warn is the only complaints I have, and I can review the OSBreak connector.
Okay, great. So is someone else willing to take a look at the light bit? So you're okay with a follow-up patch for that, Gorka? Is that?
Yep.
Okay. Unless you guys want to make those minor changes. I had a bigger one, but I think it's better as a follow-up because it could destabilize things. These seem like things that could get fixed fast and aren't going to won't possibly break your driver, but we also won't forget to go back and do them if we do them now. So that would be the advantage to that. Yuval, you sort of disappeared. Oops.
Yes, sorry, I
Oh,
have
okay.
some family issues near me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, any comment that there is to fix, we will fix it right away. There's no problem.
Okay, why don't you okay. Then why don't you address Gorka's comments and hit that, and then put up a new patch set, and then Gorka and I will come back tomorrow and take a last look. But that should be fine. And then Gorka, I looked at the brick connector and it basically looks okay, but I'm really not comfortable approving those. I'd like somebody. So Gorka said he's going to look at the brick connector and needs somebody else who's really good with brick to review that.
Yeah. Okay, so
Could you
I will upload the new patch.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Could you put the URL for the brick connector in there? I'll take a look at it too.
All right, thanks, Walt. Okay, so spell Gorka. Okay, great. All right. So that should put us in pretty good shape for these final drivers. We had Simon's Pure driver and the Dell NFS driver held up because of CI getting that set up, the resource problems there. And then the Yadro driver came in right the day before the deadline. So I haven't even looked at it. I just didn't think it was possible to get that reviewed in a day. So we can worry about that one a little bit later. And then I think that was everything for this cycle. Yeah, so people who have drivers that I put on the Etherpad as going for Z, you're gonna have to be patient about reviews because we've got to dedicate time to some other stuff, which brings me to the remainder of the cycle, which is our next topic. So I think we're all set with the drivers. Thank you to everyone for reviewing. Thanks for the driver vendor maintainers for being good about revising stuff. It makes it a lot easier if the comments we give get reacted to quickly. All right, so with the remainder of the cycle, so we're at R-9, so 9 weeks away from the release. The final RC is cut at week R-1. So we're actually 8 weeks away from the release because we can't make any changes after the final RC is cut. 2 weeks from now is the Yoga OS Brick release. So once we get the new drivers out of the way, which 4 of us are doing, or 5 of us are doing over the next day or two, we've got to concentrate on OS Brick patches. So there's several NVMe things that are open that have been sitting for a while. So we need to hit those. And there's the in-flight encryption stuff. I don't know if we'll worry about that later. But anyway, so OS Brick patches. The other thing I would like to do over the next week is Stephen Finucane has that series of Alembic patches that are converting our, we traditionally use SQL Alchemy Migrate to do our database migrations when we needed to make database modifications between cycles. That's no longer supported. The thing that everybody's using is called Alembic, which is also maintained by the people who maintain SQL Alchemy. So it's, it's the proper way to do things. Anyway, Stephen's got a big series of patches. So we merged a bunch last cycle to get things pretty much in shape, but we're still using SQL Alchemy Migrate just in case. So now we want to transition purely to Alembic. So we need to review his patches. I should get a link for those, which I've got somewhere. But the other thing about it is Stephen has switched and doesn't really focus on OpenStack anymore. So he's really doing this out of the goodness of his heart. So we need to, he's been good about responding when you do review stuff, but we need to get this out of the way because at some point he's just going to tell us to, go boil our heads and do it ourselves. So those are the main things over the next 2 weeks. And then, bug fixes as we have time to review them. I would like to request again, in case people didn't hear it at the last meeting, right? If you do ping me and say, please take a look at my patch, I would like you to list 2 patches that you personally have reviewed and have left comments on. So not just a +1, I would like you to do an actual review of the code because that's very helpful. So just as a reminder, it's a big community project. Being part of a community is that in addition to contributing code, you contribute reviews and help make the project great and move forward and stay stable. So please keep that in mind. I know it's frustrating. You got a small patch. What the hell's taking so long? It's just, everybody's got small patches and everybody wants them reviewed. So if you review some other people's stuff, that's very helpful, right? And leave a comment saying what you looked at. Right? And you don't have to, anyway. So I say this every week. I guess everybody's got the message. I don't know, but that's important. Okay, and then after the OS Brick release, so that's the week of February 7th. So 2 weeks, basically, or a week and a half maybe. And then 2 weeks after that is the feature freeze, the week of February 21st. So that's coming at R-5. So 2 things there. We've got the Cinder client release for Yoga has to happen that week, and the feature freeze. Once we go into feature freeze, we're only supposed to be doing bug fixes to make the release and testing to make the release stable for Yoga. So please keep that in mind. And then, 2 weeks after that, at the week of March 7th, is when we'll be cutting the first release candidate. And once we cut that, the only changes that can be made are release critical bugs. So security fixes or something that completely hoses the API. But other than that, it's unlikely to get stuff in there. Okay, and then you may have seen the announcement, the next PTG is the week of April, I'm not sure which week it is, but it's April 4th through 8th. So it's going to be virtual again. And, it should be exciting and fun. And then the Z release voting is supposed to be happening now, although I don't have a link. I think it was supposed to open yesterday, but I didn't see the voting information or whatever it is yet.
The name voting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're wrapping up this A through Z cycle, continuing to have it be a TC vote for the name, and then starting with with A the next time around, we're gonna go back to a community vote.
Oh, okay. Oh, so there is no voting. Okay, all right. That's okay.
I am putting a poll up for those who want to give me input of my top 4, because I don't like doing it all by myself. So watch for that on my Twitter. I'll send a note to the mailing list.
Okay. All right, thanks. All right, I completely forgot about that. So we're not voting, so you don't have to worry about it. If you have an opinion, please express it to Jay. There's a list of proposed
50.
names on the wiki somewhere.
50 Z names. People are creative.
Yeah, I didn't submit one this time because I've been shut out. I actually had to stop because the R release didn't get named Rosmeda, and that sort of put a wrench in all my works.
So you took your ball and went home?
Yeah, I did try to make the Y release called U so that nobody would know what release we were talking about when you were talking about the release. But
yeah, I remember you pushing me on that. I was like, no.
It would have led to some fun conversations. Okay, thanks. Somebody added the Alembic reviews to the Etherpad. They're all stacked, so start at the bottom and work your way up. And Steven's been good about making revisions when stuff happens. So they're interesting to look at, and we're all going to be using Alembic, so you might as well get a look at how things hang together. And there's some nice testing stuff that's been pretty cool test fixtures in Oslo DB that you can use to do some of the testing. So that's pretty helpful. Okay. All right. So I think everybody's pretty clear on the remainder of the cycle. Also, I should reiterate, right? We need more cores. So if you are interested in becoming a core or would like to learn what that would entail, what the expectations are, please either ping me or any of the other cores in IRC, and we'll be happy to discuss it with you. So I have heard from a couple of people, so part of it's getting your review count up, but the other is picking what to review. So anyway, hopefully that will help. And as I said earlier, Simon's our latest core. He's the core for Cinder Specs. He's already earned his pay by fixing the job breakage yesterday. So way to go. Okay. Any other topics or things, general stuff, before we move on to real work? Okay. All right. Let's move to line 45 in the Etherpad, allowing driver feature backports. Okay. So we started discussing this at the weekly meeting. Right. Maybe like this. All right. So with the mainline Cinder code, right, traditionally, and pretty much, unless it's related to a security problem, features are not backported because the idea of a feature is it's a pretty big piece of code that enhances or introduces new functionality, and it can have bugs in it. And so while it's nice to have features, they can destabilize a release. So we tend not to backport those. Now with the drivers, different OpenStack projects have different attitudes toward this. In one sense, a change to a driver doesn't affect anybody. It only affects the people who actually use the driver. So that's one thing. But again, it could destabilize things. So we tend not to backport features. But I believe in the past we have occasionally allowed that to happen. So anyway, there's a proposal to backport feature that is for drive. So what I would like to do is to clearly state the conditions around which we would allow this. Now, this one looks safe because basically what's happened is there's been an update to the back end, and now it can handle a situation it couldn't before. I can't remember because it was 2 weeks ago when I looked at this.
Basically, Brian, what they're doing here is that they're allowing our iSCSI, because it was only a fiber channel driver all the other way around. So what they're effectively doing, even though it's a really simple patch, it is a feature because it's a new backplane, which sort of makes it a new driver as well, to a certain extent. Because it's a whole new backplane.
HP driver?
This is the HP
Yes, it's the
Primera
HP.
driver. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It's
This is a strange one because it's a really tiny patch, but it's effectively adding a whole new driver series adding in, even though it's not a new driver file.
It's adding support for an existing back end, but the driver's the same.
Yeah,
it's not really a new driver.
Support,
which is just adding support for an existing back end, basically, because they've upgraded their firmware so that way it could support blah 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 blah. So they're going to be reusing the same driver to support that system now.
I understand that, and I get that, but to me it just feels that this is backporting a whole new backplane and enabling a whole new backplane in a previous version. Plus, they're asking all the way to. In fact, what they're also asking for is backporting to either end of life or extended maintenance versions, which we shouldn't be doing anyway.
No.
Yeah, for now, let's discuss on the U or the Usuri release.
Which is extended maintenance.
So yeah, where's I should have linked put in the Etherpad a link to the actual.
I have mixed feelings about that topic because the cloud that I manage and maintain, we're still using Train.
A lot of people are because they're using Red Hat. So I understand that, but that's why Red Hat will do backports through Bugzilla.
But in this case, I agree with. In my case, my mixed feelings is because I don't see it as enabling a new backend. Is if HP hadn't added the blocking at the beginning and they had just documented Primera doesn't work with iSCSI, then they would be safe. But I think it would work now. They wouldn't have this problem with this conversation.
Yeah, they just do a documentation update.
I think the other thing about this is for a and because this is such a small patch, why can't you just give that customer that patch to enable it?
No, that's my
process. Because that's what we have. We've had to do that for numerous customers because we've been told we couldn't backport features in our driver, so we've had to provide them with specific patches when they want.
That's where I disagree that this is a feature. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I was kind of getting to that a little bit too because it's the same existing driver code. No functionality in the driver code is really changing other than just enabling that driver to talk to this particular firmware, if you will. If they had modified other parts of the driver to accommodate special things about that back end, I would totally agree with you.
Yeah, I think my only concern about so one thing is, right, it's small and it's a change in the back end, not in the driver code. So that's pretty clear. So my big concern is I don't want to set a precedent for somebody to show up next week and say, here's 500 lines of code, let's backport it because you allowed HP to backport a feature. So I just want to be clear about why we're allowing this to happen. My concern about backporting it is that, right, the driver may have, so the driver may have changed between releases, and it may be the reason why in master you just even though everything's happening in the back end, it may be the reason why everything's going to work okay is because there've been changes to master. So I would like to see, I mean, I suppose I could do this myself, except I don't want to. So what I think the driver maintainers could do is make a list of the changes to the driver between the releases to which they want to backport it, to give us some idea that the driver in the older stable branches does have everything needed to handle the back end. So even though the back end's doing all the work, I think everybody sees what my point is there. So I would like to see that. I mean, ideally, I guess it could be like a stable CI run in those branches. But I mean, analysis, I mean, if the driver probably hasn't changed much between the two, because I think this is, you're going to Usuri because it's already in W, right? Something like that.
Yes. It was introduced in W.
Okay.
And then it is, we placed the request to backport it to V and U.
Okay. So, yeah, right. That's what happened. So the V got approved and I blocked the U because I wasn't completely sure the V should have been approved. So that's right. So that's what we're discussing. So I imagine between V and W, there's not much change. And U and V, maybe not much change, but it would be good to somehow to be clear about that when we review it.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. Between there is only one change which happened in U, but that is independent of this change. And in V, there was no change submitted from HP side for this driver.
Okay, good. So then that's good. So what I think,
but then it comes down to extended maintenance.
Yeah, how far we want to do it. So, but I think
also, this patch is also being requested for train. There's a patch up there for train as well.
Yeah, so I think at each step, if what can help us. So this is, your team helping the Cinder project team, right? If you could just slap on the review a diff or a list of the changes to the driver so that we can focus on those, then that would be cool. That would be very helpful. So I don't have a problem putting them into the extended maintenance branches. We don't release out of there, but people do use that code. And I think as long as we're careful release to release, I think if we do allow it to go to one, there's really not a lot of argument to prevent it from going to the next one, to the next older one, right? Provided that there haven't been major changes to the driver between releases.
Yes, Brian, agreed. We'll list down whatever changes were done in the code review itself so that it would be easier for everyone to review.
That's great. So then I guess all right. So we have a recording of this because we just discussed this. So this, I think, we should probably continue to, back up. So people obviously thought this was an okay thing to do before I put a block on the U. So I think the team's in agreement that for a small feature like this is okay. What I'll do is try to write this up into a paragraph or something that we can put in our documentation to explain the limitations of backports. So the primary thing is bugs are fine to backport. We're all in favor of that. Features have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. It's got to be something small so it is unlikely to destabilize the code. And this is a good example of one where there's really no code change. It's just a matter of making sure that what's happening in master is also happening in the stable branches. Okay, so I think
Brian, if I may, just out of an observation, in this case, it's a vendor-provided driver, as you said. I just want to get my head around that. because they are in tree. That is what the issue is, right? If it would be out of tree, something that they maintain and take care of, it's not a general purpose driver. It's actually targeting a specific device. So it's actually because the code is shipped as part of Cinder. That's the issue, right? If it would be just a binary blob that the vendor gives out independently, there would be no issue because it's only touching code that is vendor specific, right?
Yeah, that was Simon's point, was that this kind of thing could have been handled completely out of tree. Yeah, and this is always a sticky question. So, right, because we have, all right, so let's look at a community driver, like the RBD driver. So if we had a feature on that, would we be okay with doing that? I guess if it was really small, I don't know. We would probably say no, right?
Yeah, I would say no to that because I think it's different when you have already the code and the feature. And what you're enabling is, for example, this backend with this firmware is not working, or this backend does not work. I have a couple lines of code with an if saying, don't run it here. I disable this feature here. And suddenly you upgrade the firmware and now it's available. The code has been tested with other firmwares. What you want is to enable that as well because it has been fixed. I think that's different in that regard. It's not backporting a feature, for me at least.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the way you would describe this is that this is not backporting a feature.
Yep.
Okay.
For me, it isn't.
For example, if you go and backport like a multi-attach, because most of the time it's just raising a flag. Do you guys think this is a problem? Like, I'm not saying like that we would like to do that for NetApp, for example, but just to understand what we
I
are.
could consider that acceptable as well. If it's running the test on the stable branches, then it's okay for me.
Yeah,
because
so
maybe you didn't enable it because you hadn't done proper testing and you didn't want to put the flag too early. But if you do the proper testing, you're running the test in CI, and there are no other code changes. We've done it for active, if I remember correctly, in the past. Backport the flag because there were no changes to that.
Yeah.
To the driver.
This comes down to the next bullet point, doesn't it? About when we're going to do these backports of features or whatever they might be, or bugs for drivers, do we require the vendors to have a CI pass on that stable branch?
We've talked about that before, and we kind of threw our hands up and said, if you're willing to put that patch up against that driver way back then, it behooves you as the vendor to make sure it works. And as someone that's still running Train, which is really old by now, there are a lot of problems trying to even get unit tests working.
I get that mush going back all the way to Train Wall, but what about things like Xena? Things like Victoria, things that are still full-blown supported stable branches. Shouldn't we be requiring vendors to have CI passes for those stables?
If there are CIs against those that we still have working, then yeah, absolutely.
If you guys allow a steep comparison, I mean, look at what Kubernetes does with the CSI. They got tired of in-tree code and people requesting features. As I said, it's a steep comparison. I don't want to be unfair, but there's a clear signature. That's the CSI spec of what a driver needs to, what interface they need to speak, and that's it. As long as you maintain that, you can fiddle with your drivers as long as you want. It's your responsibility, not the one of the project.
Yes. We've actually had those kinds of discussions in the past related to pulling the drivers out of tree, et cetera, because we kind of view them as an enabler of just the back end, and as long as you maintain the signature. But then as a core member, we still have bugs that we have to deal with, and we have reviews on those things that we have to deal with, and it's a matter of load at this point, I think, for us. As someone who is a maintainer of the VMware driver, and I've greatly hacked it as compared to what is upstream, I would prefer to have the drivers out of tree and all that, but I also view the drivers as both being an integral part of Cinder that needs to be reviewed by core because we would be flooded with issues, but also at the same time, we should be allowed to do whatever we want with it in previous patches because, as someone, the VMware driver is a disaster in particular, and I've changed it so greatly, but I know that I couldn't push those patches up and get those backported because of how the rest of the core team kind of use drivers in particular in this case. So I see it on both sides. I'll shut up.
No, I mean, it's right. This comes up. I mean, I guess it can be something to worry about at the PTG to discuss again.
Well, I think comparing with CSI, it's a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
First of all, they threw a bunch of drivers over the years, a bunch of interfaces over the years. Then they started with CSI, and I know at least 3 or 4 people that had worked in OpenStack working on the CSI spec. So that helps. They know the problems, they know the interfaces that are needed, and they are also running through gRPC, which directly decouples everything. We are running as part of the process. Everything is running together, usually distributed together. So it's quite different.
I mean,
But,
I agree, Gorka, that CSI is different. I've worked on the sort of the CSI stuff as well, and the way they approached it is completely different to us. It would be like us starting afresh, which wouldn't be a great thing. And every vendor out there who's got a driver in would probably freak out because it's going to add a bunch load of more work for them to do. And they don't have enough time to do work as it is on the drivers. So it would be bad because we'd probably have to go and certify against every deployment of OpenStack. And it's enough of a pain to certify against Red Hat, let alone anything else.
So to circle back, so I think one way to dispose of this issue about the feature, I'm still fixated on the feature backport. If we describe this as not being a feature, then the problem sort of goes away. And I'm sort of inclined to do that, and then let the next sucker have to deal with this issue. All right, I'll still try to write something up so we have something clear, a clear statement somewhere. But I'll drop my -2 on the backport patch, and because it sounds like we're okay, assuming that the team's willing to do the documentation that we requested. Now, moving on to the CI vendor passes. Right, so we aren't requiring people to run their CI on the stable branches, right, on stable branch patches, right, the way we ask you to run on every change to master. But it would be good to have some evidence that, right, you've run all the tests with whatever it is that you want to backport. But that's more of a documentation thing than a requirement, I guess. So let me.
I mean, it's an interesting point, Brian, because I think, if we required vendors to work on the fully supported stable branches like Xena and Victoria, I think that would be fair. And that's, I'm not saying we shouldn't make them go back to Asuri and train, because a lot of those CIs won't be capable of doing that. But they should be capable of going back to Xena and Victoria, because they have to check any bug fixes in core code against those stable branches on their driver as well. And also, you probably wouldn't have seen some of those stable Xena dev stack problems as quickly if it hadn't been for some of the drivers failing.
Mm-hmm.
Just my opinion. I would be more than happy for our CI to be required to do stable for things that are still fully maintained.
So Jay, traditionally, so we have not required that in the past. Is that right? That was my understanding.
The third-party CI on the stable branches?
Yeah.
Correct. We have not required that previously.
All right. So maybe okay. So this is the other issue that's happening is, right, we had that enormous thing a couple of cycles back with the transition to Python 3, where we asked all the third-party CIs to run Python 3.7. And it was a big effort, and thankfully a lot of people did it. And of course, we don't support Python 3.7 anymore. We're supporting 6, 8, and 9 in Yoga. So yeah, so I guess there are two main things people need to watch out for with their CIs, right? You should be running. We decided that you didn't have to run all of them, but you should run at least one, and probably the most recent would be the best. So anyway, people should start looking into making sure their CIs can run 3.9. 3.10 is right around the corner. So I guess just be aware of that. All right. I think we should return to this. Okay. So let's, at the PTG, let's discuss this again. Maybe we can have more driver representatives present. Maybe we can do a driver's day like we did a couple of cycles ago and just deal with driver issues. Because the main things coming up are
So this actually came up because there's a Dell patch out there that's not passing the stable Xena, and that's where I went, hang on a minute, shouldn't we be passing stable Xena for a driver patch? That's why this question was asked. I don't know if Helen's on or not. Doesn't sound like it.
no. So there was a stable Xena job, but it wasn't passing.
Yeah, but it wasn't running.
Oh, it wasn't. Okay.
Didn't even run.
Yeah, I mean, we've sort of taken. This has to do with the previous topic too, right? Because we've sort of taken it that for bug fixes, if they work on master, they're probably going to work on the stable branches, at least the close ones. But right, once you get into something bigger, bets are off. All right, so
I think if you combine these 2 points together, I think by saying that we should require CI passes for the maintained stables, then that fixes a lot of the issues that you get with allowing feature backports.
Well, we could take that approach, right? That we would allow. Well, we'll have to think about it. So that is a possibility, right? That if your CI is actually running on the stable branches, then we would accept larger patches for backports. So that would sort of put the ball in the vendor's court. If they really want this thing backported, then they can. It's within their capabilities to make that happen by having test results for us that we can see.
Yeah, the vendors should take some responsibility in this. And I say that as a vendor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for example, for that multi-attach thing, I believe that we should have like the CI passing because there is specific tests for multi-attach and a way to like we have this checking of like looking for the CIO master, so it would be easier to like just let the how can I say like we could just let the first release to go wait for one more release since we don't even require the CI for backporting it. So I believe that for features, it's for sure that you must have the CI passing in every release, in every branch you want. So for example, you want to have multi-attach in train, you should have the RCI passing in train. Otherwise, there is there is no way we can validate that it's actually working. Yeah, but yeah, but for bug fix, I believe that this just having like the master -1, for example, should be fine because most of the time we have manual testing and yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Don't know what you guys think.
I usually don't like backporting features because my experience with working on features is that you work on master, you test it as thorough as you can. There are
Yeah.
Tempest tests, they run, everything looks great. We review it, everything looks great. We are all patching our bugs, and 3 weeks later, things start breaking. In a specific case, for the vendor itself is the one that maybe realizes, ooh, I missed this case. I did that because you keep working on it and you keep testing it and new CI jobs keep running. We add new tests. And that is something that backporting doesn't get.
Yeah, because you're not using the CIs.
And because the number of backports is smaller, because when we review a backport, we don't usually check the other drivers. We just say the main jobs work, the specific CI job works. So I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, Gorko, is that, you know, by the fact that you are checking Zool and you are checking the vendor's CI, you are therefore saying by default we should be enforcing CIs for anything that's backported on a driver, whether it be a feature or a bug. So that you're doing that by default now, you just don't dictate it.
Well, the thing is that since we don't enforce, CI running on stables, right, to backport it, it's kind of different.
But you look for it though.
Yep.
So, you know, you can't have it both ways. I think we should do N-1 or N-2 is a required CI for stable.
Yeah, I agree. I would say like you should have like if you can pass on master, you should be passing on Zine as well. There's no reason why you can like you can make like a 6 month release healthy. So yeah, I believe that CI should be passing at least Zina. I know that like you know like every new stable branch can impact on like no, Ubuntu version, DevStack version, DevStack get. And we start to seeing problems with dev-stacking node releases. So, for example, as was said here before, like train is getting very difficult to test, and other versions as well. Even Wallaby is not so easy to test right now. So we are in an effort to try to get our stable Wallaby running for running again. But yeah, like it's getting more difficult to maintain stable CIs, but we should have like a minimum. Like Xena should be the minimum. We should have all CIs running. It's kind of like ensures more quality during for backports. But
you see, I agree. But I mean, my feeling is we should go back to Wallaby because you've got people like Red Hat who are going to cut OSP 17, which is going to be based on Wallaby. So if people are wanting to backport drivers into that and backport fixes into features and bug fixes into that, then they should be passing their CI, and we should see it passing the CI, so that not only us as a core team, but the Red Hat team are confident that the stuff that's in Wallaby is going to work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. Like the only point, like Wallaby is like is going for us 17 now, and like in 6 or 1 year we are going. It's eventually becoming old, but Wallaby will still be maintained by Red Hat. So
we can't go N-3 when the Z cycle when Yoga comes out. We would only then require Xena and Yoga when Z comes out, for example. Yeah.
It's always a problem for us because, for example, most of our customers, or at least a good part of them, they are running train. Some of them are moving to train right now. They were using Queens. So we have a situation where they are demanding a lot of train backports, and we have this problem of we need to backport 6 releases in the past. This is more difficult to test. To also it would be nice to have a stable train running, but it's something that we are not we are giving up to.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should go back that far.
Yeah.
I don't even want to do that.
Yeah, and so it's over time it's difficult to keep a OSP version healthy or at least validated because it's long last and also there's the problem that we continued providing new stuff. We want to improve our driver, but as our customers want to stay in stable releases, to stick with OSP that in our case we believe that is totally valid. We can't deliver anything to them, so we can only deliver new stuff or new content to customers that are using pure open source. And a train is very outdated now. We have a lot of new features in our driver, for example, that we can just bring to new customers. This is for me I think this is a big deal. It's difficult to every time say customers that we are just they move to a new OSP release. They will stick with it for maybe more 5 years. I don't know, and it's difficult to. We can't basically provide new content, provide new enhancements for our customers. This is totally another discussion. I don't even why I started.
I agree completely with you. I mean, I know many customers who are using our stuff and they want some of our newer features that are not in train, and they're asking us to backport and create special containers because of Red Hat being so behind in their releases. But that's a completely different discussion. Anyway, ETG maybe. But I think we still need a sort of an answer for the Dell patch that's currently out there.
Okay. Yeah, so when you're reviewing any of the backports, right, if you're not clear that it's passed on the stable branch, then flag it. Right, and then we can get the driver developers to provide documentation or to make it clear that it's actually passing and that we have some reason to backport it. All right. So, and to be clear, right, we're not trying to be blockers of progress. We're just trying to maintain quality control.
Yeah. So we know.
But I am glad to hear that some of the vendors are willing to extend their CIs to be covering the stable branches. And then that brings us to another point. Now, I know, Simon, you've been having, so we've been recommending that people use, what's it called, Software Factory as a CI system, but you've been having some recent unpleasantness with it.
we're trying to build a new version, and it's just the most unhelpful piece of software, and it's very difficult to get it to actually get running. That's the reason our new driver missed the deadline, because we couldn't get the new CI system up and running. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of people out there who actually understand Software Factory. I'm even prepared to pay someone to come in and fix this for us, but I can't even find anyone who wants to be paid to fix it. So,
I can probably get you in contact with someone who knows about those kind of stuff from OpenStack. So I will ping around and see who's the most appropriate and try to get you in contact.
Yeah, I tried reaching out to the Software Factory guys on their Matrix, whatever it's called, channel now, and it's like crickets, basically. And they're going like, no, it's not Software Factory, it'll be something to do with Zool or Node Pool. And we're like, yeah, maybe not. But they don't. Well, anyhow, I even said I'd pay Red Hat professional services to come in and we go, it's not a PS piece of software, it's owned by Red Hat, but it's upstream and PS don't touch it. So we're struggling, which is why, we missed our driver deadline. But once we get it working, we are going to document it.
Is there any special reason to use Software Factory?
Well, the idea behind using it was that it was like a distribution of all the parts you need to run a CI. And the idea is that it would be upgradable more easily. And the other thing was that if everybody was using it, we'd have a little community of users who could help each other out to keep things going. So that was the main reason, because the experience we had with when we required everyone to start running Python 3 was that a lot of the CIs had been custom built by people who no longer worked at the company or moved to different jobs. And it was like, some manager just said to some dude, hey, get this running in Python 3. And it was like, what do you do? All the software was outdated. It was really difficult. So we were hoping something like the Software Factory distribution would be a good starting point for people. So we've been recommending it, but we, as the Cinder team, don't actually support it because that's not what we do. Yeah, I don't know. So
I have added to my to-do list to get in contact with them and see if we can figure out a way to get the new pure driver working and write some documentation and something that can help everybody else.
Yeah, because I think it would be the way to go because, the package would include the latest Zool and all that kind of thing. And hopefully once your team's got their minds wrapped around the way it works, it'll be easier to go from version to version.
I think so. I mean, one of the things that we were seeing was some weirdness around, and the Software Factory guys are saying it's potentially the OpenStack SDK that's wrong. But when nodes are being built out of Node Pool, it's randomly picking which network interface to SSH into. And if some of those interfaces are on iSCSI VLANs for data plane, it's trying to connect to them and timing out. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. It just seems to be randomly picking the network, and it's like, how do we even know where to start to fix this?
Yeah, that seems like a tough problem.
So any help?
All right, so so if anyone has ideas to help Simon, let us know. I mean, it seems like, all right, given that I don't run my own CI, so it's easy for me to say this, right? It seems like a good solution to having to build a CI system to use Software Factory. and if we're not requiring everybody to use it, but if we got a sufficient number of people using it, we would have a support community of our own that could help people out. So
I think that's it. It's building out that support community. To start building community is really difficult with one or two people. We should get maybe the Manila team to start using it as well.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, if we could expand that way. All right. So put that on my to-do list to talk to Gotham, and maybe we can, because they have similar requirements, from what I understand, for their drivers. So yeah, so if we, okay, that's a good point. Yeah, the more people who are using it, I think the better it will be for everybody. But you're right, it's getting that kicked off is a problem. And the other thing is, if people have systems that work, right, there's kind of inertia against switching because
yeah, but we all know it will eventually break. So at that point, maybe they will decide to switch if it is harder to fix than to change. And if we have it documented.
Yeah. And any new drivers that come on, we should just say use Software Factory.
When we tried to build the CI, first of all, I was going to this code, the Software Factory, and I didn't see any good example or a good tutorial or guide. And I did see examples for using Jenkins and Zool. So obviously that's the path that I went with Jenkins.
Yeah,
and
that's the big problem. That's absolutely the problem. There's we're being asked to use this, and the Software Factory people are espousing it. There's no decent documentation on this, and it's a bit of a catch-22 situation. We're prepared to create documentation, but to create the documentation, we sort of need some documentation to point us in the right direction.
I have a small comment about the previous subject, running the stable on M-1 and M-2. New drivers can be excluded from that request because the new drivers aren't in those versions. It will be, we will need to install manually.
You will only be required, for example, when you merge tomorrow or whatever, your driver gets merged tomorrow, then we make this release, and you will be running in master, but you will, if you want to backport something, that is when -1 needs to be running as well.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Which means that it's better to prepare. Sorry, Gorka. I just want to say that it's better to prepare anyway the infrastructure for running multiple branches, because we release every 6 months. So by the time you start having patches and your driver is merged, for sure in a few weeks you will have to deal with a stable branch.
Yeah, the stable branch will be cut around the week of March 7th. So that's coming up pretty fast. Yeah. So good point, Luigi. All right, thanks for the discussion on this. We will continue at the PTG. So great. All right. Next item. I guess I should stop. Any final thoughts? I think we sort of exhausted everything. Okay. Good. So continue at the PTG. Okay, so next topic is the unmerged yoga specs. So some people are here who have such specs. Trying to address, so as soon as we know the name of the Z release, we'll create a directory in the specs repository so stuff can get merged. Part of asking Simon to serve as a Cinder specs core was so that we would have somebody, because you see the way things work, right? We've got various milestones during the cycle that we have to hit. So, right, everybody was reviewing drivers last week. Everybody's got to review OS Brick the next 2 weeks. We keep moving to stuff. The spec freeze was like, I don't know, 4 weeks ago. So nobody's really looking at specs. So by asking Simon to be a Cinder specs core, we've got somebody who can continue to look at specs even while the rest of the team is going crazy reviewing other stuff. So at least we can keep these kinds of things moving along. And it's not to say that nobody will look at them, but at least you can get some feedback as things are happening. So I guess that was all I wanted to say. So anyway, so let's take a quick look at a couple of specs that were posed. Right, the new task status field is pretty complicated, but let me let Christian take over from here and say what he wants to say about this.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your patience in dealing with people like me, being unfamiliar with the process, and certainly I've seen the timeline. But why I brought this up is, when is the right point to see this spec has been accepted, be it for the Yoga or the Z release, as in it's approaching, like being ready. What's the next step? When is the right point of getting it accepted onto a list so people can start implementing the code? So excuse my inexperience in that regard. Yeah, I simply wanted to ask, what's the next step for this spec? It's not me, it's Niklas, a colleague of mine working on it. And as you mentioned, we're just expecting some feedback of what should we do. Is there more work we can do? That's why I brought it up. Not been accepted yet, so that's
okay. Yeah. So it's just basically reviews are going to slow down as we, hit the various milestones in the cycle. So basically, you're aiming for Z release, but something particularly like the task status field is going to require thought. So I do want to encourage. I think you're doing the right thing by continuing to work on it now. So we're aiming for Z. It can be merged as soon as everyone agrees it's ready and has time to look at it. So possible. I mean, yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say, please continue to work on it.
I think that spec's in a decent shape.
Okay.
I don't want to +2 it until one of the other core reviewers has +2'd it, given it's such a complex thing.
Absolutely fair point. The spec is the first step to our impression, and then it's implementing. And that is going to, as you said, it's going to be very complicated, a big change. And that's the hard nut to crack afterwards. And we want to find the right time. When should we get started? Is that actually accepted? Should we invest work and get a head around how to make the code access? I'm not trying to push it. I'm just trying to.
No, sure. Well, no, it's to our advantage too to get this started sooner, because instead of having to review it all at the same time as everything else, we can, if we can do it earlier, that's better. Well, this is good. So you got good feedback from Simon. So I'll go back and take a look to see what it looks like soonish. I got to get all the Alembic stuff reviewed first, and we got OS Brick coming up. So I guess in terms of, I guess I would just ask you, feel free to ping me on IRC to ask if I've looked at it yet.
Yeah, I believe Niklas already did. I just wanted to use this.
Yeah, because I just had some concerns about. I want to read through it again to see. I noticed you put in some charts and stuff, so that it should be easier to read. So that's great. It's basically you can start working on it even with the spec not approved, if you've got generally good, if the comments on the spec, even if it's not approved, are basically that it's going in the right direction, there may be some things you're not going to be able to answer on the spec until you're into the implementation anyway, right? So, yeah, I know what to tell you. So as long as it's not crazy, and I think everybody agrees that this is it's a good idea and it's going to be helpful. I think, you know, you can start on the implementation with the proviso that things might have to change.
And the only blow would be a full rejection of the whole spec. Then, I mean, it's wasted work.
Right.
We're going to find out things about what we missed on the spec as soon as we start writing the code. Next step would be asking somebody to join in writing the code with more experience. We got so much feedback from you guys as in, oh yeah, think about this and don't forget that, and we need that right in the code. So I just wanted to figure out, is this, as you said, unmerged specs? And I felt kind of like an invitation. Yeah, place the spec here because yes, it's unmerged. Can I bring it up? I don't want to make it a bigger point than it deserves, as in, discussing it now. I just wanted to get a feel of when's the right spot of getting a +2 on it or a merge, and then start working on the actual.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing, what would be good is to really push hard at the end of the cycle when everybody's trying to take a breath before the PTG, but we've got like a week between the final RC and the PTG, so that would be time to really kind of push. I think my feeling, at least, is that it's a good proposal and it's something that we need to do because it does address this issue of, you know, doing multiple operations on volumes that are independent that we can't do now. So it is something that we definitely want to do. And it's a matter of working out conceptually how we're going to do this and how we're going to handle backward compatibility. Seem to be the big issues. So as long as you keep an eye on the spec, make revisions as people have concerns. I mean, I think my thing was it would be good to have a table so we can see the state transitions, and I think you've added that. Although I haven't. I mean, I noticed you added a bunch of stuff, some graphs and things. So I'm
that's kind of the point. Lucas was creating sequence diagrams and state machines and everything, and so we now reach a point. Is that good enough? Is that the way forward? And then I thought, well, there's the new mid-cycle coming up. I'm just gonna join the meeting again and ask people.
I'm pretty happy with what's been done now. I think it's very descriptive. I think there's some really good diagrams in there that explain exactly what's going on. So that's good for me. I say I want someone else who's more of a coder than I am to review it, and someone who understands the underlying core code better than I do.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing with the specs is we want to make sure that it's clear what you're trying to accomplish. And it always happens that weird things show up during implementation and you have to go back and kind of revise the spec. So I think that's something we want to do, and it sounds like you're doing the right stuff. So thanks. And then you had another item here about the
while I'm at it, I was just that was something we discussed on the other mid-cycle about the change to introduce an option just to keep a few snapshots that felt kind of ready, and that's something I because it was me talking about it, I didn't want to miss the chance to ask about that. That's something that I would like to see in yoga, and I felt it was ready. And as you always say, push for reviews, and we don't want to be the loudest shouting. It was just without, as you said earlier, without reviewers' feedback, as in change this, change that, we're certainly going to miss the deadline. And if we agree this is a cool feature, we want to have that in, but it's not done in a way, or things are not worded in a way, that's something we would certainly fix we don't just want to miss the deadline of a release. That's all. So since it's me, I bring it up.
Can I suggest something? I'm not sure if that is something that happened, but if there is a feature which is very complex, maybe we can do a live session with like this, and the person that is introducing this spec to show some kind of diagram or explanation of what's going on and why we should add it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, so yeah, keep in mind that we have our weekly meeting. We have once a month in video. We have the mid cycles, but we are willing to have, ad hoc meetings to cover things.
We did it for the quota stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because for some things, it just works way easier to get a live explanation, and then we can have interactions. So you should always feel free to propose something like that at a weekly meeting, to just say, you've got this idea, you want to propose it. So we don't, keeping in mind all the other deadlines that are coming up, but we have done that in the past, and we don't object to doing that. So that's a good point. Yeah, this particular. Okay, sorry.
For the set driver, I think it's not necessary, but maybe for the task, once everybody starts reviewing it, maybe to give right before the merge, we can maybe have a session and discuss and confirm that everybody understands everything, that nobody missed anything and such, because it's probably non-trivial. But the step one is not that complex.
Yes, and also it will be educational for people that are not so familiar with the driver. Yeah, with the back.
Yeah. But I think, and Gorka's got a good point, it's everybody else on the team needs to know about it, because it's going to affect pretty much everything. So yeah. So, and probably, yeah, and so with the task thing, I wouldn't want to wait for the PTG. So yeah, so we could propose something earlier. So, and then it helps. So Christian, whatever, talk with your team to decide when you want to do it. Just don't schedule it like the week of feature freeze or something, because we'll be all going nuts.
You guys' schedule seems to be more of a hell. How you want to do it? Just, drop me an email, and we certainly arrange something. Give me a few time slots that fit for you, and we make it work. So I'm not saying I'm not going to organize something, but I'd much rather have you guys do that, because you have a tight schedule.
All right, let me take a look. What I'd like to do is, it would be good to, I think, have a meeting before the PTG, so that maybe we can just finalize things and close it at the PTG. That would be fine. So we don't have to wait to merge a Z spec. We don't have to wait till the Z spec deadline to do it. We can do it as soon as we have a directory in the specs repo. All right, so I'll take an action. I should put this on here so I don't forget. All right. All right, so I'll have a video meeting. Okay. Yeah, and then as far as the Ceph thing goes, Simon
was already so kind, looking at it, giving a few replies, and that's kind of the mode that's awesome. If we know we don't like this sentence should be rephrased, or why is that option at that level? That's cool. Just let us know and we fix it. The only thing is we didn't want to, for something that we discussed at length, we didn't want to miss the timeline, because in 3 months we would need to like really get our heads into the thing again, understand why were we doing that, and the whole reasoning again, and that's wasted time. That's just in flight you would say it's stall speed. Something moves so slowly and it rots away until it's actually doing any good. And just let us know. I mean, certainly we make we fix anything that you don't like at the patch coding style.
Yeah, so I mean, technically, we've missed the yoga back freeze, but this seems like a small enough change that.
It's not a spec. It's actually wrong in that list. I mean, yeah, it's a feature. It's a flag, changing the behavior of things. Yes, but it's not like a full-blown spec creating something particularly new. I don't want to make this a special case in any regard. We just wanted, while Jan, that's the other student we have on our team, he wrote the code, and certainly I would fix anything that you don't like in 3 months still. But he was on it, and I'd like to get it merged, and more than happy to look at things again and explain it or document it differently or whatever is required.
All right, so this looks pretty small. I'll take a look at this, and I'll grab somebody who does a lot of work with Ceph just to make sure everything looks good. And then I'll bring it up at the next Cinder meeting. Maybe we can retroactively approve this for Y, because it looks like one of those. It's a very small feature. And since you've got somebody there working on it, it might be nice to just do it.
Ryan,
yes.
I don't want to be pessimistic, but the Ceph backup driver has had the most bugs that any backup driver has ever had. So, because it's quite complex, so it's not about how big the patch is.
Okay.
There are a couple of things that need to be. One needs to be careful. I think.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay. No, that's a good reality
patch,
check.
Probably the only thing we have to be careful here. It's probably I will say it. The proxying of the LibRados library, because it's in C. If you call it directly, you block eventlet, and then this whole volume service gets blocked. But I think that's probably the only big thing that we have to be careful about. I will add it to my review list, because I was the one that originally said -2 to the patch and said, nope, this should not happen. But I will review it and see that everything works fine. Or at least I think it works fine.
So, yeah,
thank you very much, Gorka. That's the highest honors. I mean, from somebody who was very skeptical of the whole idea, and then taking a look at it, we gladly take your reviews. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, and then even if it's approved for Z, I mean, right, once the stable branch is
merge the state. I'm not. Maybe that was too strict. As in, I wanted this in yoga. We don't care. I mean, we have a small setup. We upgrade to the latest release anyway. We don't worry about the old CI stuff you were talking about earlier. But that's not the point. I was saying merged as the state we wanted to be in, and not being in discussion, just almost done 99%, because that's the thing that wastes time later on, because you need to really look into it again before you click merge. But once it's merged, we don't care if it's the Z release or yoga. So actually, it would be cool in yoga, but I mean, you have bigger things bigger fish to fry.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. And master opens for Z development as soon as the stable branch is cut. So that would be late the week of March 7th. So if your students, anyway.
Yeah, it's good. You're still going to do that.
So we don't have to, okay. All right. All right, great. So I think we're set with that. Any other open specs that people had questions or comments about that they wanted to discuss? I think not. Okay, at some point we need to do spec repo maintenance. Namely, there's some specs that were approved that weren't implemented, and we need to decide what to do. I guess we have the untargeted directory that we've put some things in where things got to the point where they look good and were approved, but then the developer got a different job or something and nothing happened. So we may have to do that. Anyway, we don't have to talk about that now. Okay, what I did want to do is, this week is our new feature status checkpoint. So I did want to check in on people who are working on stuff, mainly to make other people aware, because right over the next 2 weeks, we got brick reviews, clear priority. Then we're going to start reviewing features. So we need to sort of surface them so that they're at people's awareness. Key thing is that if your feature impacts the Cinder client, right, the Cinder client has to be released at R-5, which is the same time as the feature freeze. So that means your feature has to be done early so that you can include the support for the Cinder client. So just be aware of that. I don't know that we have anything in flight this time that does that. Okay. So as far as new features, it's not quite well, we've got the C group V2 stuff that we use for throttling for, I don't even remember now. I'll have to go back and look. All right, so anyway, is there anyone here who's working on a feature that they would like to make everyone aware of, or would like to get some feedback on what they're working on at the moment?
I would like to ask a question for the people who actually know about their customers' deployment, or they have a deployment, about what the size of how many volumes per project do they usually have? Because I've been working on the quota system and I've run some tests, and I've discovered that the new code that I was planning on doing, it's fine for a certain amount of volumes, but as soon as you start increasing the number of volumes, snapshots, and things like that, it becomes even slower than the one we currently have. So yeah, because you have to, even with indexes and everything, the database still has to count. So for example, if you go beyond 35,000 volumes in a snapshot, then for example, create volume, the quota part will be slower than what we currently have.
And that's about 35,000 over the whole deployment?
For a specific project.
Okay, all right, good. All right,
it's per project, yeah. But it's still, I'm working on the quota. I created a POC with all the operations. It seems to be working, but I noticed that it's going to be slower for large deployments, or what I think may be a large deployment. I don't know how many volumes people usually have and how many instances. So I don't know. Okay. So that's what I was wondering, because let's put it this way. If people tell me 35,000 volumes existing in a project, not in the whole deployment, in a specific project, is what people consider a small deployment, then I can throw this literally away. If they say, well, it's a medium large, okay, then I'll modify the spec and have two different drivers. This one that calculates dynamic, and one that improves what we currently have, that I have already worked on POC, just a couple of operations to be able to see where it stands between the other two. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I have a couple of graphs, and yeah, that's why I was wondering if people knew the sizes of the deployments.
Yeah, I don't know the sizes of on a per project basis. I know across like how many volumes they have sometimes on the whole deployment, but not necessarily how they, if they've only got one project or if they've got 50 projects. I have no way of knowing that. But we see very few customers go more than around 10,000 from what we're seeing from our customers. But there are some that go to, they're talking about having 100,000. But I don't know whether that's across, that's going to be across the whole deployment. But I don't know how many projects they have. And I guess the probably Ceph users are probably going to have more volumes than external users, external backend users.
Okay.
Yeah, let's another big user might be if right, you have Glance using Cinder as a backend, because it's although.
Well, I don't expect somebody to have more than 50,000. They also have the Glance would also have the images split by
right.
user, right? Or they put them all together.
It depends, but the quotas for the service should be set high anyway. So I guess you still have to. It's not going to be forget I said that, because I think the use case is different enough that right, because when you're managing, maybe I don't know. I think let's put together an operator survey, and then Amy Marich had said she can tweet out that it exists, and that a lot of operators pay attention to the Twitter feed she has for some kind of I forget what it is, but anyway, and I think we can get some feedback, and then maybe we can at Red Hat let some of the people know that the survey exists, and they can contact customers to fill it out also. Because I don't know how else we could get this information. The surveys in the past, sometimes we've gotten good responses and sometimes we haven't. But I guess if we make a push, maybe we could get some decent feedback.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, so let's maybe you and I can just take a few minutes to slap out some questions, and then we can put something together. Okay. Anybody else got anything about features? All right. Good. Okay, so everybody's clear on the deadline, right? So the feature freeze is R-5, so the week of February 21st. It's on the Yoga release schedule. What that means is the feature has to be merged by then. You can do bug fixes up until RC time, so over the next 2 weeks. So, but the thing needs to be working. It needs to be finished. And then if you've got a Cinder client, if you have Cinder client, so please check, make sure you don't have any Cinder client impact, because if you do, you got to finish it really soon, because we have to release the Cinder client the week of February 21st for Yoga. Okay. Next item's one from Simon about, so, right, the Zool CI that we run upstream basically does a teardown and a setup every time. So we would not come across this. But Simon has noticed that he's getting accumulation of stuff in his backend. And he was wondering why. So Simon, why don't you take over here? And
yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, so this is a strange one. We're seeing after even a successful run of the Cinder Tempest CI, we're seeing 4 or 5 volumes being left behind and not being torn down. And I have no idea of a way to check this, but it's consistent. So every week I have to go into our CI backend and clean it up, which is not the best thing. These things should be torn down. And I was just wondering whether any other third-party vendors, CIs, are seeing this issue. Because if they're not, then it's something very specific with our CI. But if they are, then there's something going on that we really need to try and get to the bottom of.
I believe this happens every time, even if you run Tempest manually on a dev stack, because I've seen it before.
Okay, so I'm not going completely insane.
Yep. One of the things that could be happening is the cache image thingy that we have. You know how Cinder downloads from glance,
Yes.
creates a volume, and then clones from it?
Yes.
As far as I know, nobody cleans that up. We don't even have a command to clean it up. If you don't go as the service user in list volumes and delete them. That may be the problem. I never bothered to look into it, but that could be the case.
So didn't we discuss the glance cache and how we clean it up in a previous PTG or something?
Yeah,
I can see Brian's
sounds
on his
familiar.
Yeah, I'm sure we discussed something about this. But if that's what's causing it, that might explain it. But would that explain why I'm getting 4 or 5 volumes left behind?
No, that's probably what Brian was saying at the beginning. So it's possible that there is simply a bug in the testing code which doesn't do the cleanup. For example, there was a recent fix in Cinder Tempest plugin for some tests. But the easiest thing is to, I tried to open the image that you linked in the Etherpad, but it seems it's expired. So from the names of the volumes, it could be possible to get which tests created them, because it's usually a function of the test name, and see whether it's possible to fix them.
Yeah, I can certainly, it does it every time. So I can go recreate that image, and I won't do it through a paste bin, I'll do it a different way, and get that information and the associated run so that people can have a look at it. That's easy enough to achieve.
I can report from our third-party CI that we don't see it. We don't do a third time each time. We just do a cleanup and check out the different patch. We don't see 4 or 5 volumes, but maybe we are not running the specific test that's causing this issue. So we need to understand which test is doing it, and then we need to see if we are running this test, and then we can say if it's happening here or not. But when the Tempest fail, we do see sometimes a volume or volume type left behind. And then we are running some kind of a purge script to clean it up before the next one.
Yeah, so with the volume types, the cleanup can sometimes be difficult, but it's the cache issue that Gorka mentioned. Because I put up a test that basically it creates a special volume type, and then when the test is over, it deletes every volume of that type, regardless of whether it created it or not. Because if you have the cache enabled, then the volume gets put in the cache, and then when you try to delete the volume type, you can't delete it. The API denies it because
it's in use.
Yeah. So and that could be what's happening. Yeah. So Luigi's got a good point about I forgot about the names of the resources. So the Tempest tests do name resources that try to get the name of the test into the resource name, so you can sort of track this stuff back. So if we look at the Cinder volume logs, we may be able to to figure out which tests are leaving these suckers behind.
Yeah.
And there may be some weird cleanup things like this with the
for the cleanup, if you're using Zool v3 and you're inheriting from the DevStack Tempest playbooks or from the playbook available in the Tempest repository, there is already some logic to apply some cleanup. You just need to enable an option in your configuration. So there is this run Tempest Cleanup parameter setting. Because Tempest has this utility built in, you need to run Tempest cleanup -- in its save state before. It basically creates a JSON file with a list of all resources. And after that, whenever you run Tempest cleanup, it will remove everything which is not in the JSON file. And the logic there in the DevStack Tempest YAML in the Tempest repository just does that. So if you enable that option, it will clean up everything.
Can we document this somewhere that be available after this meeting, because it's important thing.
It's documented. So there is a role. So usually the documentation of the roles is in the role. It's in each role. I'm not sure if there is a global aggregation so that you can see all the documentation of the roles available for Zool. But the variable. So whenever you use like Tempest Cleanup role, there is this. It's documented there. But yeah, okay. I understand.
So the name of the role is Tempest Cleanup.
And it's included. Let me paste the. So where is the? Okay.
All right, thanks, Luigi. That's helpful.
Yeah. I'll check that out as well.
Thank you.
Okay, now one other thing from my wish list. Our third-party CI documentation is in several different places. So we've got some of it in the All About Drivers page that's in our main Cinder documentation. And then we've got two separate pages on, well, at least two separate pages on the wiki, the OpenStack wiki about third-party CI. And while most of the, well, what am I trying to say? There's some stuff left out, I think, and there's also some inconsistencies. So I'm just tossing that out there for people who have like free time and like to work with documentation. But it would be it would be nice to get that stuff probably just into our documentation so that it's under version control. The nice thing about the wiki is you can just update it with notes and things, but that's also not nice. And also the wiki isn't really maintained that much anymore, so it's hard to Anyway, it's a potential for someone to be a hero of Cinder if they want to take on the task of reorganizing the third-party CI documentation. Okay. All right, anybody else have any wish list type things they want to toss out there for people who have spare time? All right, well, I think this has been I should pause longer to let people gather their thoughts, but I'm going to assume nobody else has something to say. I think this has been a productive discussion, so thanks to everyone for attending. I'm going to end 10 minutes early, and then I can just talk to Gorka real quick, and we can map out this operator survey so we can get some questions. So if you're interested in that, please stick around. I'm going to end the recording now. Everybody's clear on the timelines over the next 2 weeks. We've got the new driver reviews over the next day or so. Hopefully we'll get those knocked out. And then it's OS Brick and the Alembic patches. The links to that stuff is in the Etherpad, so please check it out. Don't forget, Feature Freeze is coming up the week of February 21st. So that's a big one. We're always available, well, not always. You can often find people in the OpenStack Cinder channel. You can always find us at the Cinder meetings because we are good about holding those. And then, yeah, don't forget the next PTG is going to be April 4th through 8th. You can sign up. There's a link on the Cinder meeting agenda for next week if you haven't seen the email announcement. It's the same deal. It's free, but they like you to register so that they can keep track of how many people are doing this. And we'll, as soon as we know the name of Z, we'll put up an Etherpad so that we can start with gathering topics for the PTG, although we already do have a few things that are falling out of what we talked about today. All right. Thanks, everyone. Feel free to stick around, but I'm going to stop the recording right now.